Okay. Hi guys, I'm Marissa Elkins. It's Marissa I've been a nurse for 3 years. All three of those have been on the medical surgical intensive care unit, which for the better part of the last almost 2 years now has been the COVID ICU. And I don't even know the easiest way to sum up a typical day on 6 North when we're full-blown COVID it's exhausting. That's probably the easiest way to say it. It's hard to take care of patients day in and day out because these are the sickest patients we have ever seen. And at the beginning of this, they were grandma and grandpa. They had lived their lives. But now with the Delta and the newest variant, people are young. We've lost moms, dads. There are so many kids out there who have lost at least one of their parents to COVID, and no kid should lose their parent in their 50s, 40s, 30s. That's just, they've not lived a life. They have much more life to live. And these variants and the latest surges have just been taking young people from us, and it's very, very hard. It hits very close to home.
We were talking a bit off camera, Marissa. Can you just talk about what it's been like over the last year and the different feelings that you've experienced as a nurse and caring for COVID patients on the front line?
Yeah, and we were kind of talking, we go through almost like the stages of grief. When you have a loved one that passes away, you go through different stages: denial, anger, sadness. And I think that as nurses caring for COVID patients, or at least I can only speak for myself, I also go through stages like that. There's times when I'm just angry. I'm angry that this is happening, that I had to bring my daughter into this world in the midst of a pandemic. I'm angry that we're not being listened to, and that people out there still truly believe that this is simply just the flu, even though statistics have proven that it's not. It's much, much more than the flu. After I'm angry, then I get sad. I go through periods of sadness where I'm just upset and heartbroken that I'm seeing these things day in and day out. And then I get to the point where I'm just over it. I'm annoyed. I become numb to everything, because after all the things I've seen in the last year, even fighting this variant, I just kind of start to block it out and just forget about it, because it's the only way to cope. And then the cycle starts over again. So depends on the day, I guess.
What has it been like most recently? You've experienced the original strain and then the Delta. What has it been like in terms of mortality and sickness from those two variants that you've experienced firsthand?
They're younger and they're dying quicker. That first variant, we would hold on to people for a lot longer. The first surge, we'd hold on to people a lot longer. They would hang out on the ventilator. Anytime now, your likelihood of, once you hit the ICU and you are on the ventilator with COVID-19, your likelihood of coming off is very, very slim. And being somebody that has been the last person to talk to somebody before they were intubated, and then weeks down the road watching them die, it's very hard to carry that around, knowing that aside from maybe a family member, I was the last voice that they heard. I was the last face that they saw, and it's tough. It's really tough. These variants are taking young lives that have a lot ahead of them, and young lives that could be protected by the vaccine. Most importantly, I got vaccinated when I was pregnant. I was nearly 9 months pregnant when I got vaccinated. My daughter was a week and a half old when I got my second shot, and we've been safe. Nothing was wrong with her. She didn't have any complications from the vaccine. And after seeing multiple new moms die of COVID and never meeting their baby, I'm just more and more thankful that I did get vaccinated.
Okay, media, feel free to submit your questions as you see fit. I can ask a couple more while we wait for some more to roll in. So Marissa, can you also just maybe speak to the importance of a booster shot? Obviously, the vaccine now has been widely available for a long time, and the CDC and others have recommended eligible people, which is almost everybody, to get the booster to fight these variants. So would you encourage people who are considering it to do that?
Absolutely. I can tell you firsthand that the booster has protected me. My husband, who is also a healthcare worker, he was not boosted at the time and he did contract COVID, but I was boosted and I did not. I tested negative. I tested negative multiple times. Thankfully, he had mild symptoms, but firsthand, I can tell you that getting the booster is what kept me from contracting the virus.
Looks like we had one kind of come in here. Let me see if I can scroll up a little bit. First, if you could kind of explain, to best of your knowledge, explain kind of the policy on reporting to work at this time for healthcare professionals who have been exposed to the virus or had the virus. If you know that policy, if that's something you don't know, I can get that policy as well. But what have you heard or what is your knowledge?
From my experience with my husband, the quarantine is 10 days after testing positive. After that 10 days, I believe, and this was over a month ago, but after those 10 days of testing positive, he was allowed to go back to work. I don't know specifically what the policy is now with the new CDC recommendations, but that's what it was at least a couple weeks ago, month ago.
Okay. And yeah, I would urge you to look at those CDC guidelines because that is something that Bryan Health, we obviously follow and adhere to. And there were some changes last week. So yeah, feel free to check that CDC website for the most up-to-date restrictions or rules in that area and know that Bryan follows those as well. Okay, another question. Marissa, are you experiencing any staff shortages due to people testing positive and having to stay home? I guess if you can maybe speak to, have we had any staff issues or what have you seen from people on your unit?
I mean, absolutely. We don't want our nurses coming to work sick, COVID positive. Just as we don't want our patients to be infecting other patients, we don't want our nurses to be infecting others either. So we've definitely seen, I wouldn't say, and I don't, this is just on my unit, but we haven't had a huge influx, just a couple here and there. But there's nursing shortages everywhere. So it doesn't feel any worse than it was before this, to be completely honest.
Okay. Let's see, another one came in from KLIN. Can you compare how sick patients are now compared to other surges or other times you've cared for people?
This surge, at least the surge from the start, I'm kind of lumping this, I guess, all in with the start of the Delta variant too, because I feel like everything's kind of all flying around right now, but they just get sicker quicker. You know, the first wave, when COVID first started almost 2 years ago, the patients would be sick. I mean, they would need the ventilator right away, but we could get them off within a week. Now we're seeing people on the ventilator for over 3 weeks. When I first started nursing, which 3 years ago, I guess, the maximum time we would have somebody on the ventilator was a week and a half. And then we would start talking about removing the ventilator, putting a tracheostomy in. Now we see people on the vent for 2-3+ weeks because they are so sick, maximum support, that we don't have any other options but to just leave them like this. They're requiring to be medically paralyzed to allow the ventilator to do its full support and are still not meeting requirements to even be liberated from the ventilator. So their lungs are just so much more damaged than we ever really, I guess, thought they could be. I mean, to the point where it's irreversible. I mean, I can't obviously release any medical information, but I've seen multiple patients where we've come to the point where we have no choice but to remove the ventilator, or they will die on their own, even on full ventilator support. More recently, we've seen people requiring, I guess not requiring, but going into multi-system organ failure from this surge as well. So it's not only respiratory failure, but they're having other parts of their body, other organs start to fail from the virus as well, which wasn't something that we saw the first time around. It was mostly just respiratory, but now it's becoming multi-system.
Okay, there's another question that came in. Let me scroll it just a second here. So earlier we published our daily statistics that reported there were 11 deaths within the last 7 days at Bryan. Can you speak on how this is impacting the nursing and medical staff at Bryan, specifically the mortality and the deadliness of this disease?
It's exhausting. It is exhausting and it's heartbreaking. We become very close to these patients because they are the only face that we see in person for the most part. I mean, we FaceTime people's family members, but once they're on the ventilator, it's mostly us and them. We're usually the only voices that they hear and the faces that they might see. So it's really just heartbreaking. It's depressing. It's exhausting, but we do it. And we're going to keep doing it until the bitter end. But that doesn't mean that it's not wearing on us every single day that we do it.
Thank you, Marissa. Appreciate that. Another question came in from Matt. Are you seeing people hospitalized who have been diagnosed with the Omicron variant? Is there any slowdown in hospitalizations or people needing ICU care or ventilators?
We're not really testing. I don't think that we are specifically testing on the variants because our course of treatment isn't any different. That was kind of the last thing I heard. I haven't spoken to any physicians regarding testing the variants, but the last time we had somebody ask about it, the general consensus was we're not testing for it because we wouldn't treat it any different. There's not any slowdown. Honestly, we're seeing more people as this mask mandate has been lifted and holiday gatherings happened. We've been seeing more and more people. It kind of comes in waves. And while there might be a lull, we know that there's definitely a surge right around the corner. But everybody that once you hit our ICU doors, the likelihood of being on the ventilator is high. And to have a COVID patient in our ICU not on the ventilator is very, very unusual.
Okay. Any other questions for Marissa? Feel free to submit those. We'll wait here for a little bit to see if anybody else has any other questions. And Matt, I would also follow up with you on that last question about the Omicron variant. Certainly that's something that the health department and the state do the sequencing on that. So if that's something that maybe you could reach out to them for more information, I'm sure they'd be happy to, if they're able to share that information with you. Okay. Looks like that's all the questions, Marissa. I would just.
One just came in.
Oh, one came in. Okay. Let me scroll down here real quick. With the updated CDC guidelines on isolations, which means they were shortened from 10 to 5, how do you feel about that as a healthcare worker, seeing the virus and how it affects people close?
I just think it's ridiculous. If we are telling our patients that they must isolate for 20 days, and for us to be able to come back COVID positive after 5, I honestly feel like that kind of creates mistrust in the healthcare system. I feel like we're already not fully trusted as this pandemic has progressed. We've we felt that our voices aren't being heard. And now outside people knowing that the CDC recommends that we can come back in 5 days, well, it must not be that bad then. And that's not at all the case. I guess as a nurse, we kind of feel like we're not being protected. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the best way I can speak about that. Just kind of feels like a slap in the face, if anything, after all the hard work we've done, how much PPE we've used, how many masks we've gone through, how much caution and protection we've used, for them all of a sudden to be like, well, you are dispensable. If you can come back in 5 days, you must come back in 5 days. And that's just kind of makes us feel like we're just another mask thrown in the trash.
Okay, thank you. And one more come in. This one, Marissa, is, besides vaccinations, what can you tell the public on how important it is to protect yourself and others from the virus? What are some things people can do or keep doing to protect themselves?
Wear a mask. The mask protects you, it protects others. You might not feel sick, but your next door neighbor that's immunocompromised that you visit every Tuesday, you might be passing something on to them. Wear a mask, wash your hands. If you're not feeling good, just stay home. I mean, I want to spend time with my family members too, but I love them enough. I don't know what I'm trying to say, I guess. Just be safe, wear your mask, wash your hands. Be aware of how you're feeling, and know what signs and symptoms to look out for. I mean, that's everywhere. Everybody at this point knows the signs and symptoms of COVID. If you're experiencing that, go get a test. You can buy a test at Walgreens, CVS. I mean, you can get a test anywhere and everywhere. It takes 10 minutes, but it could save somebody's life.
Very, very good answer. Okay, I'll piggyback off on that one more. If you could kind of maybe once again give your feelings on the vaccine and the booster, and how effective that can be based upon what you've seen, and I'm sure you've cared for patients that have been unvaccinated and both vaccinated. Just maybe one more pitch for the booster or the vaccine. Yeah,
of course. Almost every patient that I've seen that's unvaccinated and lands themselves on the ventilator does not make it off. They end up with a tracheostomy, or they end up being compassionately extubated, meaning that we take them off the ventilator, keep them comfortable, and let them pass away peacefully. Any patient that was vaccinated, that's the best way to keep yourself out of the ICU, I guess, is get vaccinated. If you don't want to see us, please, please, please get your vaccine. I do know that there are medical reasons that some people feel that they can't. If you feel that you can't for some sort of medical reason, talk to your doctor, but just please, please do your research. Listen to your friends in healthcare. We've seen it, we're educated. And get your booster if you haven't, because like I had said earlier, it definitely kept me from getting the virus.